I grew up with books as my closest companions. While other children found joy in marbles, in kites, in games of chase under the sun, I found mine between the thin, fragile pages of stories. My earliest memories are of candlelight flickering on paper, my lips moving quietly, whispering words I barely understood, but desperately wanted to. Books were not just entertainment for me, they were escape, discovery, and nourishment. Each new story I devoured was like a meal to a hungry soul. I read of warriors from land I could not imagine, of rivers with names that rolled off the tongue like music, of kings and queens who seemed carved out of myth. As I grew, my reading matured. I journeyed from fairy tales to histories, from folklore to epics. Yet, something always bothered me. I noticed that so many of the tales of grandeur, of empire, of civilization were told about lands far from Africa. Greece, Rome, Persia, China, Arabia, all these were painted as the heart of history. My continent was often mentioned in passing, and when it was painted in shadows, a place of tribes, of suffering, of wilderness waiting to be discovered. Still, I kept reading. I was searching even if I did not know it then. And then one day I stumbled upon a story that would change everything. It was a tale of a king named Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali. I remember the exact day. I was sitting in a dusty library, the kind where the shelves lean slightly from the weight of forgotten books. My fingers were wandering lazily when they stopped on a worn spine. The title was simple: The Empires of Medieval West Africa. I opened it not expecting much, but as the pages turned, I met him, Mansa Musa, the Lion of Mali, the king whose wealth defied imagination, the ruler who turned the world's gaze towards Africa. The deeper I read, the more I felt something stirring within me. It was as if my entire image of history, my very sense of self was being rewritten. And so, in this retelling, I will let you walk with me as I walked with him. I saw him first as a boy, though the records never spoke much of his childhood. I imagined him walking along the Niger River, his water sparkling like the eyes of destiny. His name was Mansa Musa Keita, the first, born into the Keita dynasty, heirs to the throne of Mali. Mali at the time was no ordinary land. It stretched wide across West Africa, embracing the gold-rich soils of Bambouk and Bure, the salt mines of Taghaza, the trade routes that carried caravans of wealth across the Sahara. It was an empire of farmers, scholars, soldiers, and traders, a tapestry of people bound together under the rising sun. Musa grew up in this empire, learning the ways of leadership, absorbing the wisdom of Islam, and preparing for responsibilities greater than he could yet grasp. His moment came not by design, but by circumstance. The emperor before him, Abubakar II, had a restless spirit. Legend says that Abubakar launched an expedition into the Atlantic, determined to find what lay beyond the horizon. He left Musa as his deputy, his trusted kinsman, but Abubakar never returned. And so Musa ascended the throne in 1312. He was not just a king, he became a Mansa, king of kings. When I first read of Musa's wealth, I thought it was an exaggeration. How could one man, one kingdom hold so much riches? But the records were consistent, repeated in chronicles across continents. Gold flowed through Mali like blood through veins. Salt, equally precious in those days, added to the empire's fortune. Through Timbuktu, Gayo, and Niani, caravans carried goods that reached Cairo, Tunis, and beyond into Europe and Asia. And at the heart of it all was Musa. The Arab historian Al-Umari once wrote that Musa's wealth was inconceivable. Some modern scholars have even dared to call him the richest man who have ever lived. But Musa's greatness was not only in wealth, it was in how he wielded it. Every great king has a moment that defines him. For Musa, it came in 1324, when he embarked on his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca. I closed my eyes as I read, and I imagined walking in that caravan. Picture it: 60,000 men, women, and attendants, 12,000 slaves, each dressed in silk, carrying golden staffs, hundreds of camels, each laden with hundreds of pounds of gold dust. The sun blazing down on a procession that stretched farther than the eyes could see. When Musa passed through Cairo, the world trembled. He gave out so much gold in charity, in trade, in gifts, that the value of gold itself collapsed. For over a decade, the economy of Egypt suffered inflation because of his generosity. And yet, to Musa, this was not waste. It was worship, it was honor, it was a declaration that Africa was not silent, not empty, not lacking. It was a center of civilization, of wealth, of faith. News of him spread like wildfire across Europe and Asia. Cartographers began to redraw their maps, placing Mali proudly upon them. In Catalan Atlas, maps of the 14th century, Musa appeared enthroned, a golden crown upon his head, holding a nugget of gold in one hand and a scepter on the other. But Musa was not just a traveler, he was a builder. When he returned from Mecca, he brought with him scholars, architects, and artists. One of the most famous was Abu Ishaq al-Sahili, an Andalusian poet and architect. Under Musa's patronage, al-Sahili designed mosques and universities that still echoed through history. In Timbuktu, Musa transformed a simple town into a jewel of learning. He commissioned the Jingwereba mosque, which still stands today. He established libraries filled with manuscripts on law, science, mathematics, and philosophy. Timbuktu became a magnet for scholars across Africa and the Islamic world, earning it the title of the Athens of Africa. I remember pausing when I read that. I had always been taught to look to Athens in Greece as the cradle of knowledge, but here was an Athens in Africa, built by an African king. That revelation shook me. Musa ruled for 25 years until his death around 1337. His empire reached its zenith under his reign, stretching from the Atlantic to the Niger Bend, encompassing millions of people. His successors would inherit a land rich in wealth, but none could match the legend of the man who had walked to Mecca with gold enough to humble nations. But his true legacy was not just in riches or power, it was in the confidence he gave to a continent. He shattered the lie that Africa was without civilization, without glory. He stood as proof that Africa had kings who rivaled and surpassed those of any other land. When I closed that book, I did not feel the same as when I had opened it. Until then, I had been reading history as though I were peering through a window at worlds I did not belong to. Greece was theirs, Rome was theirs, Persia, India, China, all theirs. I admired them, but always with a distance. But Musa? Musa was mine. His empire was on my soil. His blood was African blood. His story belonged to me as much as to the annals of global history. For the first time, I felt a fierce pride. I began to see Africa not as a shadow cast by others, but as a sun in its own right. I thought of the children who had grown up like me without hearing his name. How many of us had been denying the knowledge that we are heirs to empires, that our ancestors walked in golden caravans, built mosques and libraries, funded knowledge that shaped the world. The tale of Mansa Musa was not just history, it was medicine. It healed something in me that had long been wounded. It gave me the gift of seeing Africa as whole, as rich, as glorious. Now, whenever I read, I do so with different eyes. When I hear of Caesar, I remember Musa. When I hear of Alexander, I think of the Lion of Mali. When I hear of Athens, I think of Timbuktu. And I tell his story whenever I can, because I know there's a child somewhere leafing through a book, waiting to stumble upon the tale that will change everything. For me, that tale was Mansa Musa, the king of kings, the richest man who ever lived, the African sun that lit the world.